Anyway, um, welcome everyone to the Toku Portal Podcast. It's me, Zero, here with, well, nobody, because I guess things came up, weirdly enough. Um, Platinum's feeling sick, and I guess Vashi must have been busy with work or something. So, it's just me. Which, whatever, that's fine. I've done this a couple of times. Anyway, yeah, so sorry everyone. I guess you were like all excited while everybody thought about the new show, but you can get their takes next week. But it's me here, so at least hopefully this will be quick. But yeah, that's working, this is working. Yes. Sorry about all the random nonsense. Anyway, so yeah, welcome everyone to the second series of the Reiwa era for Kamen Rider. And this series, yeah, it's pretty interesting. Kamen Rider Saber. So the first episode just came out this week, and the interesting thing about it is it's a lot of setup. I mean, I guess a lot of first episodes are like that, but considering this is written by the lead writer of Kamen Rider Ghost, yes. They also wrote the prologue for Kamen Rider Saber, and they're gonna be the lead for Saber. He is also the secondary writer for Ultraman Max and Ultra 7X, apparently. Oh shit, they did Ultra 7X, that's cool. Takura Fukuda. Yeah, Takura Fukuda. So, yeah, hopefully their second Rider series goes better than the first, which was Kamen Rider Ghost, which was hampered by a lot of Toei's executive meddling. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so this show, basically the premise is, I guess, it's sort of similar to Ghost, where it's like, oh, there's another world and they're trying to connect to the main world. The little difference in here is, originally there was some kind of book which held like all this knowledge, but the people tasked with protecting it, somehow some of them wanted more power and they decided to try to take it. There was a fight over it. The book ended up being, well, not destroyed, more like disassembled. And so I guess like the most of this show is going to be like, putting it back together, sort of like Pandora's box from Build, I'm guessing. Which, at least it's an interesting MacGuffin. So that'll be interesting. I mean, which leads us to sort of like the gimmick of this season, are like the little books sort of thing, like the henshin devices. They look pretty similar to Gashats, honestly. I mean, like, they've got like the Gashats from X8, like the visuals and stuff, except they have like a nice book cover, which is interesting. Yeah, sorry, I'm just kind of like, sorry, it's a little awkward because I'm like looking around at like different screen settings and things. But whatever, it should be fine. But yeah, so everybody's trying to capture these books, I guess. We see at least like 3 villain characters. They haven't been really named or anything in the show. We don't know if they're riders or they're just monsters who look like riders. What's going on? Considering this is pretty much going to be a rider versus rider show, most likely riders. So that'll be interesting. I mean, they're setting it up early. Yeah, like this show has got like a very almost Sentai-esque feel to it, but I guess that makes sense because of like the large cast and stuff, right? So it'll be interesting. Yeah, so like honestly I don't have too much to say. It's a lot of setup and stuff. Like it would be interesting to see what the others thought, so we can bounce off stuff. But like again, the main plot is pretty much like right, like the main character is Kamiyama, right? And he's basically a novelist, and he's I wouldn't say slacking off. It's more like he promised to help this kid, so he's helping him, but he's behind on his deadline, so his editor comes to talk to him. His editor is Mei Sudo. And then they end up getting trapped in like the monster attack that happens this episode. And basically going to the other world, so which kind of just sets up to the beginning of Saber. Personality wise, it's interesting. Like Toma seems like he seems like a really nice guy. Like May May is interesting because she's sort of like Akiko from Double mixed with like Mari from Fies, sort of. Right? So like she's kind of got like the attitude of keeping the main character in charge, but she's a little spastic, but she's also like hyper enthusiastic, sort of, I guess, like a little bit like Akari once. Like Akari was super into science, and then she was super into denying that ghosts exist, and then she went back to being super into science. So I guess they're like the writer learned from that mistake, so we're not like putting a downer character into a fun series. Speaking of which, like this show seems to be a little more lighter note with the ending and everything, being like kind of the sing-along dance thing, which is again more of a Sentai thing. You don't see that too much in Rider, but like it's kind of a depressing year, so I kind of see how they're trying to make it a little more fun, at least starting off, because shit might happen. But so the monster attacks, and basically they're trying to connect the worlds, right? For whatever reason at this point. I guess mostly just to gain power and stuff. And then Toma pretty much ends up saving the day because he has one of the pages, or I guess books, like the henshin device things, left to him by, I guess, the person who had it previously, so maybe the previous Saber. They haven't revealed too much about that character. I mean, the one thing I would say I got from that character is, like, one, the way he talks, it's very Garo-esque, like very Makai Knight style, so that's kind of cool. He looks like Taiga, which is Koga's dad, right? And he's got, like, the outfit from, give me one moment. Like a Sentai character. So he's kind of an interesting mix of characters. I'm trying to figure out what that Sentai is called. Man, I'm so bad with Sentai names. Oh, Juoger. Yeah, like, what is the character? Yeah. Bardo from, Juoger. So basically like Bird Dad, everybody who's seen Juoger knows who the fuck I'm talking about. So he's kind of got like the clothing going on, and like storyline wise, I'm like, that's interesting. Especially because the show's kind of got a little more Sentai-esque seemingly going on, plus like we might have like older characters and like legacy characters and like a lot of other shit going on, so it'll be interesting to see how that character's backstory intertwines. But looping back to our main like two characters for the moment. Yeah, May's great. I mean, like, I thought she might be a little bit annoying, but like no, like they handle her perfectly. Where it's like she has like great reactions to like everything. Where it's like, hey, just get this done because I promised a friend I'd hang out, and like Toma is like, okay, yeah, promises are important, right? So he'll do it. So that's pretty cool. And then like she goes to the other world and she's like totally, like shocked and surprised. And, she starts taking pictures, which kind of links back to something that happens later on in the episode where it's like, I guess they're like, yeah, it's 2020, right? Like smartphones exist, especially considering we're capturing like entire blocks of a city, right, and transporting it to the other world. There's no way like people wouldn't have evidence. So like it shows later on that it's like you can take pictures but nothing survives when it comes back. So that's cool. That explains like why they can kind of be somewhat secretive. It's just sort of built in to how the world operates, or the magic, right? And yeah, she's pretty great. A lot of energy. She's also in the ending where it's like you see like all the current writers and stuff, and it's like she looks like she's part of the main group, so like maybe she'll become a writer, considering there's like a lot of freaking writers in this show. Like I hope that would be pretty good. I mean, like there's no excuse with the amount of writers the show's gonna get. Anyway, looping back to Toma, he seems pretty interesting. Like he's generally like the nice guy hero, but he's also more like, it seems like, I mean, it makes sense for a Kamen Rider to be like this, but like it seems like he seems pretty easygoing and chill, but like there's this like sense of determination that he has, and like trying to do the right thing or like keep it together. Like he's got like the instincts to be a leader, type of thing. And for like a writer versus writer show, that's what you need. And also for like a Kamen Rider, that's a pretty good trope. So like setting it off from the bat, like yeah, he's a little simplistic, but like that's not bad. The show's just getting started. He does have this one thing where he keeps having dreams of like when he was younger, I guess he failed to save a girl or something. And then it flashes back to May. Or in this episode, the similar thing almost happens to May. And then they reveal something where it's like, oh, the books have the ability to rewrite stuff. So I'm like, is that what happened to May in the past? Or did that happen to somebody else? Or was that going to happen and it got rewritten? So it'll be interesting. Because they said like Saber's like book henshin thing is one of the lost ones, right? He's the lost knight, which is sort of revealed by the villains, but also the secondary writer who already showed up in the first episode, Rintaro Shindo, who kind of gives off like a lot more of like Kamen Rider Spectre vibes. Like he's got the blue thing going on, so tie back to Ghost and stuff. But he also says like weird stuff like afterward he's like, how can a Homo sapien become a hero? So it's like, okay, so he's not just a regular human. That's gonna be interesting. Like it seems like he's got a lot of going on, and he seems like he's more experienced, like classic Ren type character, or like Spectre, I guess is a better fit. But like he seems also a little more chill, so it's gonna be interesting to see where he goes. But yeah, in this episode he's just hanging around until the end, where he just shows up and he's just riding his like CGI robot beast thing. Like, well, that's interesting. But like it just happened, so we'll see. Yeah, so a lot of this episode is just mostly set up. Not much happens. Yeah, like honestly, Toma seems okay. May seems okay. Rintaro, like he's not a total asshole or anything, so I'm like I don't have a negative impression of him or anything. It's more like he just exists right now, so that's fine. Like the villains seem cool, like they have cool designs, but again, they haven't really done anything besides just show up for the first time, right? Um, yeah, so it's mostly like it's an interesting series. I'll be honest, like this show, it's not bad, but like it's not like this amazing wow first episode where it's like holy shit, I have to watch the rest of the show now. No, it's like okay, yeah, that was a decent start, for a first episode. Like I wouldn't call this one of the best first episodes of Rider, but usually Rider does tend to have not the greatest first episodes, so I'll let that slide. Um, yeah, the only other major things to note, I guess, would sort of be like the fights and the action, the suits and stuff like that, where it's like, let's just get like Kamen Rider Saber out of the way. Like, he looks like a mix of a couple different rider suits. Like, he's kind of got like a double-esque aesthetic, sort of, but he looks more like, but his fighting style is more like Drive fused with like Wizard and stuff. And then the flaming eye mask thing is clearly like an Akamizer thing going on, or at least like Akamizer 3 like reference, or who knows. It's a very like interesting show-esque touch, but it sort of makes him a little, like kind of an interesting timeless. Like it's an old-timey look, but on a new body. So it's like, it's sort of like what 01 did, where it's like the mask is similar, but like, or it's like the mask is a throwback-y thing, but like the rest of the suit is pretty modern. So it's like an interesting take. I don't hate it or anything. Yeah, like the suit's pretty nice. His belt is kind of interesting too. Like for as big as it is, it seems to like it looks fine. Like it doesn't look as bulky as you'd think it would. Also, it's got like 4 slots, but he only used 1. So I'm like, wow, we're setting a lot of shit up early. That's gonna be interesting. So kind of like a Forza thing going on. Honestly, like I think if you go more than 4, it just kind of starts becoming a little insane. So like, yeah, 4 is probably the max you could probably go on a rider build, or starting off in the front anyway. Like if you put it on the side or something, like maybe you could do some more, but like yeah, in the front, like 4 is about the max I'd say you'd usually be able to go. As for the fights itself, I mean, they're okay. Like me and Platinum were talking and stuff. It's like, yeah, they probably had to like change how they shoot stuff and do a lot of stuff because of COVID, because like they've kind of got the other world thing going on, because Fairy Tail Otherworld, but it also gives them, which kind of gives them kind of a Ryuki type vibe, which as you see like Shindo like show up in the other side through a book, so it's like very much like Ryuki shows up through the mirrors and stuff, which I'm fine with. Like they use a lot of CGI in this, but like it's a lot of cheap CGI, and that's not to be like totally bad, but it's like 01 seems to have had a higher budget, but then again they're probably trying not to blow their budget on so early because they have so many different writers. But the thing is, like, it's got like very simple effects. Also, it's got the other world, so again, cutting down on production, because like we don't have to shoot that many people now. Plus the attacks basically seem like, I mean, they kind of did this in Kiva too, where it's like you do the attack and then it just cuts to kind of like the Sailor Moon effect, where it's like, oh, okay, now for like next like 10 seconds or something, it's just stock footage. Again, with the amount of writers that are going to show up in like COVID and all that, you pretty much have to kind of think about ways to like cut down production stuff. So I don't hate it or anything. I mean, the fire effects are a little cheap, but I'm like, what are you gonna do, right? Like, you gotta save money somewhere. So that's kind of annoying. I was not expecting him to throw down a fire sword and be like, alright, buddy, you want a henshin? Fucking, here, pick this thing up. And I'm like, okay, that's a pretty intense way of fucking showing a rider's resolve. So that's interesting. Um, Honestly, like I could let most of that slide. The one thing that that annoys me is the finisher. Like the finisher is it's nice, but like after 01's finisher is having like so much fucking energy with the letters and like such badass rider kicks and everything. It's sort of a letdown, which is kind of sad, but it's like what are you gonna do, right? Like I was honestly hoping it's like this is one of those problems where it's sort of like that writer has it's sort of a Square Enix problem of like, oh, we made something good, but the next one has to be different. It's like, why? It's good. Why not just borrow it? It's like maybe they'll borrow the 01 shit, but like in a couple of years, like the next show can't copy it. So I was really hoping for like when they did their finisher, they would write it out just like 01 did, but I guess they're not doing it. At least not for this show. Maybe it'll come back a little bit later. Honestly, like that's on the my major complaint is like, oh, I missed that style of finisher because it puts so much more energy into a finisher. Whereas these are like, yeah, these are like regular ass finishers for the most part, where it's like it's a little lackluster now. Which again, it's the first episode. They're probably just trying to cram stuff in. It'll probably get a lot better when we have like better actions going on. We'll see. Maybe they're just trying to keep the effects for the finisher simple because like last couple of years they've been kind of going crazy with effects, so they're probably trying to just keep it simple and stuff. And it's like, yeah, it makes sense. Like if a ton of guys show up, it's like in the olden like Ryuki days and shit, it's like the finishers, well, like most of the fights didn't have too many effects, only the finishers did, but like now every attack has like all the CGI in it, so they're probably trying to keep it simple, especially because like Saber is a main rider, so that means he's gonna get like multiple forms and stuff, so they're probably not trying to spend too much money on this, but you know, it is what it is. I wish it was slightly better, but it's not terrible. Like it's an okay start. Yeah, so talked about Saber, talked about Shindo, talked about Toma, talked about May. Yeah, again, so like the villains, they haven't really done much except send out one villain, one monster, so I can't really get a read on them. I mean, like their designs look cool. It's interesting that like the secondary just showed up to meet the primary, but I guess the show's really gonna take off now, so we don't have time for that, which is cool. Hopefully he's not a total jerk, which would be kind of a buzzkill. The show also seems to be a slightly lighter tone, at least right now, which again makes sense because usually when like bad things happen in Japan, Toei tends to make shows that are slightly lighter or happier themed. Can't really blame them at this point. But yeah, hopefully Toei doesn't meddle with the show too much and it could be good. Right, like it's not quite as amazing as 01 just yet, but 01 had like a whole series to get amazing. This just started. And besides, with how many writers are gonna show up, like if you don't like I mean that's the one advantage of writer versus writer shows is like if you don't like the main hero, like Kabuto, right, like just pick one of the other guys. So yeah, it will be interesting. Hopefully more of the crew shows up. I'm super rambling at this point and not saying much, that's why I'm trying not to stay on too long, but yeah. Catch you guys next week. Hopefully, I mean the show is definitely going to improve. It's unlikely it's going to become bad, but because of how much exposition and setup that the first episode had to do, it was a little slow, so probably starting from next episode it'll really start going, which we'll see. Hopefully more people show up to talk about it. That would be nice. But as of right now, I'm feeling it's a decent start to a show. not the greatest start, not terrible in any respects, but it's a start. I do want to see where it goes. So yeah, that's it for today. Catch you guys next week. This is Zero signing off.